Dear students, here is a presentation on a one-act play, The Progress by St. John Green Irvine. We'll talk about the characters, plot, and the main themes of the play. There are three characters in this play. One is Professor Henry Corey, who's a scientist. Professor Corey is trying to create something, work on a formula in his laboratory in the play. Then there is Mrs. Meldon. Mrs. Meldon is Corey's sister. Mrs. Meldon is a lady who appears to have a very kind heart. And then there is this servant who makes short appearances, bringing tea, a flower wreath, etc. If you look at the plot of the play, there is Corey who's sitting in his laboratory and he has finally been successful in creating a formula for a deadly bomb that he believes will revolutionize war. And how will it revolutionize war? It is such a deadly bomb that it will kill number of people, a big number of people, and will decide the war. Instead of continuing war with some small bombs, Corey thinks that one bomb will be able to decide the victory of one nation over the other. Corey seems super excited, very pleased with this new invention. And he wants to celebrate his achievement with his sister at evening tea. But when his sister appears, she does not seem to be very happy with what her brother has been doing. We come to know that Mrs. Meldon has lost a young son in a war, in a recent war. And her husband had died of grief because he could not bear the loss of a young son. So, in this way, she has suffered a loss, both directly and indirectly, she has suffered a loss in this war. Students, please keep it in mind that this essay is a post-war essay. And what is a post-war essay? A post-war essay is written after the war, and it mostly contains the horrors, it contains the details, or it is a discussion, or it is a critique on the horrors of war. So here we see a lady who has lost her son and later on her husband to this war. So she seems so grieved, and she has ordered a flower wreath to be put on her son's grave today. So when she is taking tea in Corey's laboratory, he talks about, in a super excited manner, he talks about his achievement of having created such a bomb that is going to finish people in seconds. Now, how strange that Corey can reason about the success of his achievement with a woman who is a bereaved mother of a young son. So, she's too heartbroken to congratulate her brother on this achievement. And she hates war for its anti-human side. Most part of the play is a conversation between Mrs. Meldon and Corey, where Corey is trying to tell her how important it is to have such deadly bombs like the one he has created in his laboratory, and how is it going to serve the world. While on the other hand, there is Mrs. Meldon, who hates war and does not think that war is something from which anybody, any country, any person can benefit from. So she's dead against any war. you look at the two contrasting points of view throughout the play. Corey, with his insistence that war can be abolished through creation and invention of deadly weapons. And he thinks that through these deadly weapons, war can be finished without spreading much. And they can bring about a lot of destruction of the enemy and his place and his territory and his people, so that he will have to stop war. While Mrs. Meldon looks at the human side, and she thinks war is anti-humanity. It is against mankind. It is against humanity. It kills people. And she does not care. It does not make her happy if the enemy and their kids and their sons are killed. Because she says mothers suffer all over the world in the same manner. A mother's love for her child is the same all over. So it doesn't matter whether it's the enemy's son or it's her own son who's killed. So throughout the play, these two contrasting points of view are presented through Corey and Mrs. Meldon. She keeps on arguing with Corey against war and the destruction it brings. But then he's unable to look at the situation through Mrs. Meldon's eyes because he's too intoxicated, and you see him calculating what money and fame he will get through his invention. So he does not care about the human side of his invention or human side of the destruction it might bring. We see at the end of the play, how does the conflict resolve? It resolves when Mrs. Meldon turns the table with all that formula and things that he was doing and the results he had got. She just turns the table and everything splashes at the floor. But then Corey says, no problem. I have that formula in my head. It doesn't matter if those things are broken or spoiled. It is then that Mrs. Meldon picks up a knife and she kills her own brother. It is then that the conflict is resolved. And it is then that she thinks that she has done an act for the greater good of humanity, of mankind. So this is how the play ends. So what is the conflict in the play? Should there be war? Is war good? Or there should be no war? War is bad. War is destructive. Now, we would look one by one, we would look at some of the themes that the play presents. A few major themes that I have chosen from the play are: 1, that it is an anti-war play. 2, there's a discussion, there's a conflict in the play between humanity, in general, and versus personal gain. Then, there is ironical meaning of progress that modern man is so proud of. So here we will also talk about the title of the play. It has been titled The Progress, and we'll see how is the title justified. Then there is a conflict in the play between international interests and human relationships. This is also a debate. This play is also a debate on abuse of scientific knowledge. And one last theme is how the writer has put hard and harsh realities, facts and figures against human feelings, sentiments and emotions. So now we talk about all these themes in detail one by one. First of all, we said it is an anti-war play. Now, what is an anti-war play? An anti-war play is a play or a piece of writing that denounces war, that says that war is bad, that is against war. Anti means against. So, this is a play that is against war, that shows war is bad, that talks about the destructive side of war and denounces that. In this way, Mrs. Maldon, because this is Mrs. Maldon's point of view, this point of view is shown in the essay or depicted in the essay through Mrs. Maldon. So, in this way, Mrs. Maldon becomes the mouthpiece of the writer himself. Then, being an anti-war play, it shows the negative side of warfare. Play is a plea to stop war. Then, it talks about the effects of war on common people, how destructive it can be, what bad effects it can have on common people. The play talks about the suffering that war brings. It talks about loss of human life, directly and indirectly. When I say directly and indirectly, there are some people who become a victim to direct victims to war or weapons, like Mrs. Maldon's son who died in war. But then there are some indirect deaths, some indirect losses. And what are those indirect losses? Like people like Mr. Maldon, Mrs. Maldon's husband, who could not bear the loss of his son and died owing to the grief he had. So that is also a loss that war has caused. And then it talks about the pain of bereaved families. You can feel the pain of Mrs. Maldon throughout the play. In every dialogue, she cannot think of any other thing than her son. She goes to the past again and again. She talks about the time when her son was born. And then she brought him up. She raised him with hopes, with dreams, with efforts. And she says, my dreams, my hopes, my efforts were shattered into pieces when I came to know about his death. So you see, this is what an anti-war play is. He needs so much that he is unable to. He is blind to see or have any feelings for humanity. The next theme is ironical meaning of progress. Now, this is very important because this relates to the title of the play. The title of the play is The Progress. Now, this is ironical. This is satirical. Writer satirizes modern man's definition of progress. He says, making deadlier weapons. Every nation is trying to defeat the other nation in production of deadly weapons. We powerful nations threaten each other through war, threats of war. He says, this is not progress. Is this the progress? Would you call it going ahead? So he says this is ironical. This modern man's concept of progress is it has an irony. He satirizes it. He says this is not progress. And then the writer makes it a point that what modern man terms as progress is actually destruction. Complete destruction. This is very important that he says war is a retrogression instead of progression. War does not take you ahead, it takes you back. It does not make you progress. You step back. It does not make you civilized. It makes you uncivilized. So, he makes it a point, the writer makes a point that it is basically peace. It is basically a betterment of living condition of mankind that are to be termed as progress. If man needs to measure his progress, or if man wants to progress or go ahead, he has to make this world a peaceful place. And peace should be the yardstick, and the betterment of living conditions should be the yardsticks through against which progress is to be measured, not through war, not through destruction. So the satire and irony that the writer has used in the title is, in a way, it pleads man to think about his own creation, his concept of progress, his own actions. Man has to become accountable for what he is doing. See? So this is how, when they ask you a question on justifying the title, this is what you say. The writer wants us to think about the true meaning of progress. Is it progress that every nation thinks of creating or inventing more deadlier weapons than the other nations? If there are threats of war all over, is this progress? So he questions modern man's concept of progress. Okay. Then there is this theme where international interests, the interests of different nations, are put against human relationships. You see, what are the countries doing? Countries of today, I mean, in the modern world, countries are seeking power through what? Through war, through waging war against one another. So, during a war and after a war, maybe sometimes before the war, how do countries calculate their power, measure their power? Through their losses and gains in numbers. They say they killed so many people. For a country to have killed more people of the enemy is a victory. So the writer asks this question: is it a victory? Killing human beings, breaking ties among human beings, disturbing human relationships, making families bear losses of their loved ones. Is this a gain? Is this what the world is coming to? Is this, or can this be an interest of a nation to kill as many people as it can, though they are enemies, but they're human beings. They are human beings. This is what he wants us to think about. They are not numbers. When you say we have killed, our army has killed this big number of people, they're not numbers. They are people. They are human beings. So the writer says, we have to correct our definition of progress. Progress happens when human relationships are strengthened. When human relationships are the prime concern of a country, of a nation, it is then that it can take pride on its progress. Now, one of the themes, and a very important theme, is abuse of scientific knowledge. And this theme is shown through the character of Mr. Corey, the scientist. The writer is putting a question in front of before all of us. Is science something that is to be used for the benefit of mankind, or for the creation of such deadly weapons of mass destruction? So you see, Mr. Corey's character is that of a scientist who does not care about humanity or mankind or the benefits of mankind, but can only think about destruction. And it is there that he uses science to bring about that destruction and to create weapons instead of using it for the benefit of mankind. Science was something that when man had the scientific knowledge, he could have used it to make this world a better place to live in. So instead of advancing destruction, science could have worked towards promoting peace in the world, promoting stability in the world. See? And then Mr. Corey believes, he has a firm belief that he will be paid well for this invention, paid a lot for this invention. It means that the states of the world, the nations in the world, the countries in the world, they encourage scientists who create such deadly weapons of mass destruction. So the writer says, is it the right trend? Aren't we abusing scientific knowledge? Is knowledge to be abused at all? Is knowledge not something that needs to be, to be used for the well-being of human beings and for the world itself? And if scientific knowledge is bringing destruction alone, is it a knowledge at all? Or is it a knowledge, or is it a form of knowledge, or is it a form of exploration at all? Okay. The next theme is that in the play, harsh and hard realities, facts and figures, numbers are put against human feelings and emotions and sentiments. You would see in the play many times Mr. Corey making fun of or like getting irritated or mocking Mrs. Maldon's display of emotions about her son's death. He thinks she's being sentimental. And when she denounces war in that emotion, under that emotion, he calls it sentimental. He says, don't look at it sentimentally. Be logical. Be logical. Now, the writer says, is it being logical? Because you see, you have to keep in mind that human feelings and emotions are something that make us human beings. We are human beings by the virtue of our feelings and emotions, not by virtue of logic alone. The humane side of us, the softer side of us, is depicted in feelings and emotions and sentiments. So if we have to make this world a beautiful place to live in, a peaceful place to live in, a pleasant world to live in, we have to make feelings and emotions more significant. So they are not to be disregarded as something wasteful, useless. As Corey treats Mrs. Maldon's emotions and sentiments, he calls them useless, wasteful. He wants her to look at the larger picture, not only her own grief, but the larger picture. What he ignores is, or ironically, Mrs. Maldon is the one who looks at the larger picture, because she can understand the pain, the grief that accompanies the loss of your loved ones. See? So here I will also talk about the resolution, or what should say, the ending of the play, where Mrs. Maldon kills her own brother. Now you see, this can be looked at in many lights. Maybe you do not justify, as readers, you do not justify Mrs. Maldon's killing her own brother, because that is one form of killing. But then there is another way of looking at it. She had been, all through the play, she had been defending, or you can say she had been defending peace, or you can say she had been talking against killing, undeserved killings, as happens in the war. But then she kills her own brother at the end. How do you justify that? And you can even get a question on that. So what happens? But then there is another side to it, which I saw while I read the play, and especially the ending. It's a sacrifice she makes. She has already lost a young son, and a husband. Her brother is you can say the only hope, or the only close one, or only one of the, if not only one of those relatives who are alive, and she lives with him. So you see, after the loss of her son and her husband, he is the person she lives with. So he's quite dear to her. He's quite precious to her. But then there are things that are more precious. So the greater interest of mankind is precious. So I felt that she had made a sacrifice here. She had saved millions of lives by killing this one man. So it is justified. She talked about saving of lives. She talked against killings of human beings. So she did that in this one killing. She did that. She made a sacrifice of a loved one. She knows how painful it is to lose a loved one. Still, she kills her brother. And we know that this will be another loss in her life. And she will weep on, that she will shed tears on. But then, what happens? This is for the greater good of mankind. She has saved millions of lives she hasn't killed her brother, she has killed the formula of mass destruction. She has killed the formula of deadly weapon. She has killed the formula that could bring deaths and losses of human life. So she has saved millions, and this was her, you can say, belief that we need to save lives, not end them. But in ending one life, she saved many. So this is what justifies the resolution. This is what justifies Mrs. Maldon's action, her act, the last act. So she proves that human beings are the most important. Human life is the most important entity. She is going to suffer the loss of her brother. We have seen her suffer the loss of her son and her husband. Why not her brother? She lived with him. But then, on the other side, there were lives of so many people. Millions of people. Numberless people. And here, another thing is to be looked at. Those millions that she saved, she didn't know them. Still, she saved them. And her brother was a relative, was a closed one, was a loved one. See? So this is how we looked at the themes and the interpretations of the play. There may be more. And I believe when we read plays and we read stories and we read any piece of literature, there are as many meanings to it as there are readers. So when you read it, there'll be more themes that are coming up. So for the purpose of this presentation, that was all. Thank you very much.